everyone. Welcome back to the ARTCAST. This is episode number 2. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, and we're joined by Dr. Arthur C. Bartner, 50 years directing the USC Trojan Marching Band. Dr. Bartner, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
Great to see you again, and I had a fun time doing the show last week. Let everyone know we did have a second part of the show that we didn't get to, so some technical difficulties. We will get to that in a future episode, but today we're going to talk about a couple different things. The 1970 Trojan football season. Everyone remembers the Alabama game. We'll talk about that, but you're going to get in more detail on the Notre Dame game from that year, which was also very interesting. And then the tradition this week will be one of the USC Trojan fans' favorites, the Weekender, Dr. Bartner. So real quick, Dr. Bartner, was the Weekender something that happened, was that going on from the very beginning, or did it become a tradition while you guys were doing that with the band?
No, when I arrived in 1970, that was well in place.
Okay.
And that had been going on for years, and the band used to take the train up to San Francisco, but that wasn't very practical. So now we take 7 buses.
Okay, 7 buses. That's a lot of buses there. All right, well, we're going to get to that in the second part of the show. But the first part, we wanted to talk about the 1970 USC football season. So that was your first season as the band director, is that correct? And there was 55 band members that were all male that came to that first band camp back in August.
Yes, that was right. My first year, I had just turned 30 on August 31st, and I had kids in a band that were older than I was. So we went up to Idlewild, where USC had a music camp, and I held my first band camp. It was a wild time, to say the least.
I'm sure, yes. 30 years old. That's crazy just to think about that. But so last weekend, it was the 50th anniversary of the USC at Alabama game. So that's the one everyone remembers, Sam Bam Cunningham on September 12th, 1970. There was 18 black players for USC, and Alabama was, of course, all white at the time. USC won that game 42-21, and Sam Bam Cunningham, 135 yards, couple of touchdowns. So technically, that was your first game as the band director, but the band didn't travel to away games other than the Weekender at that time.
That's correct. And, what a way to start my career, the team going to Alabama and really destroying a great team down there. And through the years, Sam has become a very good friend of mine, and the band. He's been a guest speaker at some events, and he takes the credit that Bear Bryant, came over to him and John McKay after the game, and he believes that he helped integrate Southern football. And Bear Bryant obviously was very impressed with the way Sam and the Trojans played that day.
Yeah, that's great. He's been it's great that he's still been a big part of many of these USC functions. I've spoken at events where he was at. We've had him around. That's great too. So he's had a really good relationship with the band over those years.
Yes, and a real gentleman. He's a guy that the university can be proud of. He represents himself and USC football extremely well.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So that was a great game, obviously, but the team struggled a little bit after that. It wasn't really smooth sailing. I guess it was 4-4-1, I think, after that game, and which probably hurt you the most, getting trounced by UCLA 45-20 after that.
Yes, you talk to some of the players back then, and they had great teams through the 60s, and John McKay still had his coaching staff, and they had all the talent in the world, but they just couldn't find a way to put it all together and to play as a unit. And I can remember very well going up to Stanford, and we're going in for the winning touchdown, and I believe it was, Rod McNeil, fumbled on the 1 yard line, and, things always seem to happen, and we kind of lost to all our rivals, Cal, Stanford, UCLA. So it turned out to be a very average football season.
Yeah, so after the great start, and everyone knows that Alabama game, that legendary game, 4-4-1, and then, what could be a throwaway game, right? You have the number 3 team in the country, Notre Dame, come into town. So that had to be, and I think it was raining and stuff, had to be a unique experience for you.
Well, that was, growing up and, back at Michigan, you always hear about this terrific rivalry between Notre Dame and USC. And Notre Dame was loaded. They were undefeated. They were number 3 in the country. They were going to the Cotton Bowl, which was a big deal back then. They had an All-American quarterback by the name of Joe Theismann. We were 11 points underdog, and we probably should have been more. So nobody was really looking forward to that game. And the one thing to our advantage was that the weather turned ugly. It started to drizzle at the beginning of the game, and then it started to rain harder and harder. And by the second half, it was just a downpour. And the field, which was a sand-based, natural grass, was like a lake. There was like 1.5 inches of water covering the entire field. So, that seemed like the only thing that was going in our favor as we, started that game.
You mentioned the rain, and I want to put up a picture of the band uniforms, but apparently you were not unhappy that it was raining, that you could potentially get new uniforms for the band?
Yeah, these these are the uniforms that I inherited, and they had this chest protector, and it really inhibited the breathing process, which is so important to playing a brass instrument. And so I wanted to get rid of that, and the helmet was just a piece of plastic put over the inside lining of an army helmet. So I wanted to remodel that, and so I decided to just go out and march with these uniforms and hope that the university would say, "God, those uniforms got trashed for the Notre Dame game. We'll purchase you a new set of uniforms."
All right. Is that what ended up happening? Did they get rid of those uniforms?
They agreed that the uniforms were trashed, but they told me to go out and raise the money for new uniforms. So that was the beginning of my fundraising career.
Nice. Year 1, you get to do that. That sounds very USC, though. That's pretty much on brand for USC. So that's
true. Very true.
But it gets done. You get the job. You got the job done, and did that. So you mentioned Joe Theismann, who I think was Theismann at the time. They changed his name to rhyme with the Heisman. He had what do you have? Over 500 yards in that game. It was insane what he did in that game.
He was unbelievable. And our quarterback, Jimmy Jones, he probably had his best game of the season because he led us to 3 first half touchdowns, and he had a couple of good receivers in Bob Chandler, Sam Dickerson. And so he played a great game. But I think the difference was the turnovers. The Trojans didn't have any turnovers, and Notre Dame had 8. Count them.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And 2 of them happened right at the beginning of the second half. We were leading 21-14, but at the top of the second half, they had like 2 turnovers in the first 42 seconds. USC recovered a fumble on a 17-yard line and took it in for a touchdown. But then on the next series, Joe Theismann dropped back, and he kept dropping back. And I think our lineman, Willie Hall, chased him all the way into the end zone. He fumbled in the end zone. We recovered. We got quick touchdowns. And all of a sudden, the score was, what? We had 30-something points to their 14, and they had a hard time coming back and pulling that game out.
Yeah, great. So 38-28 final score for USC. All those turnovers certainly made a difference, but the number 3 team in the country came in and couldn't handle the rain. So, but there was also a memorable, and maybe this was part of the reason USC got those turnovers right after the halftime performance. I'll put up the Henry Mancini photo here from that halftime performance. But there was really a big break for you guys to have him. Television cameras there at halftime, and a special Mancento presents Mancini. I think they played the Pink Panther theme. It had Better Be Tonight, Baby Elephant Walk. So this was sort of like the first step for becoming the, quote, Hollywood's band, and having that tradition of guest conductors for the Trojan Marching Band at games.
Yes, this is a great story for the Trojan Marching Band because, my first year and, I was kind of running out of shows, and I said to my teaching assistant, well, you write this last show. Okay. So good. I expect that he would write the show, have the whole thing done. And now we're a week and a half out from the game, and he's got 1 tune done. It was a great Buddy Rich tune entitled Norwegian Wood. And I'm going, oh my goodness, here it is. Nationally televised game and no show. But in that, week or 2 before the game, Henry Mancini and his staff called and said, would I be interested in featuring the music of Henry Mancini? And we would film this, and then we would televise this on his show, Monsanto with Mancini. So I, took about 3.5 seconds to think about this, and I jumped all over it because as a high school band director back in Michigan, I had played Hank Mancini's tunes and became a huge fan. And here I am again, still 30 years old and, as green as can be, walking into Hank Mancini's office and sitting down with him. And of course, he's real relaxed. He's got a beer in his hand, smoking a cigar. And to him, it's like just, another day at the office. And I'm going like, oh my goodness, I'm in music industry royalty here. So it was a great moment. And he was delightful at halftime. I'm kind of, going like, geez, it's downpouring. It's a foot of rain. And he's up on a ladder. He conducted the whole show with his hat, rain coming down, smile on his face. He loved every minute of it. So it was, it was just a great halftime show for me and the band. And then we held on and we beat the number 3 team in the country. And as John McKay said, it made the long winter feel shorter and happier.
Very nice. Yeah. So if your teaching assistant didn't procrastinate, would you have had that halftime show? Would you have scrapped it and brought in Henry Mancini?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Um, when opportunity strikes, you really find a way to make it work. And the band and myself, we've been very fortunate. John Williams, Quincy Jones, Alan Silvestri, we've had great composers reach out to the band. And when those moments, of course, it doesn't happen in the last week and a half before the game, but when those opportunities present themselves, you just kind of reach out and go, yes, we're in, and we'll figure out a way to make it work.
So in that case, you said it's like what, 9-10 days before you're going to go live national television. Was the band familiar with those songs already, or was it sort of like a scramble to get everyone ready and the marches and all that to get ready for halftime show?
Yeah, his music was so familiar, and this has become kind of a tradition of the Trojan Marching Band. They're very professional. Again, when you have a great artist, a great composer, they kind of step into another gear and become almost like professional musicians. And they were ready. We probably had our best rehearsals, and the formations looked great, and the rain didn't bother them. So I give a lot of credit to the band for stepping up for this auspicious occasion.
All right. Well, that's great stuff for the 1970 football season. And everyone talks about the Alabama game, but the Notre Dame game one, if you weren't familiar with that, that's an interesting one too. And some great stories from Dr. Bartner. And it's amazing, your first year directing the band. But there's a tradition, and we mentioned it at the top of the show, and I think you said it goes back to the 1920s for the Weekender, with the band traveling all the way, up there to the San Francisco Bay Area. 7 buses, like you said, to get the full band to Stanford or Cal. And each bus, now the tradition, I think this is a newer one, they have a chosen theme, so all the band members are dressing up to match it. So I guess every bus has a different theme, and they all dress up that way.
Yes, as this trip has evolved through the years, and now it's we divide the band up by sections, and they have these themes. It could be Star Wars, it could be Star Trek, it could be Halloween, it could be there's an idea of some of the costumes, and we do have rules. It's we make it very clear that this is a party bus, but there's absolutely no alcohol on this bus. They can have food, they can have soda pop, and but the kids look forward to this, and it's a great bonding. And I think that's Darth Vader there, Hawaiian outfit. But anyway, it makes the trip go a lot faster, and it brings the band closer and closer together.
I like the Han Solo and the Carbonite, the guy, and that was pretty good. So there's some good costumes in there. So they dress up on the bus, but then also I believe it's Friday, you have the Union Square rally. So that's a long time tradition. The evening before the game, and you're in the heart of San Francisco. And if you've ever been up there, anyone's been up for the Weekender, it's just a great sight to see, with the Trojan Marching Band basically taking over the streets of San Francisco, all the USC fans out there and marching. So that's been a great one. I'm sure is a fun one for you too.
Yes, and this has gone on for years and years and years, and it is, I would say, really one of my favorite moments, and where you literally take over the city of San Francisco, and it's a great setting, and the sound of the band bounces off all the buildings, and the crowd just packs that square, and there was thousands of Trojans, and they're all fired up for the game. And we obviously, do our school songs. We feature the USC Song Girls and our twirler, and a lot of times we'll have a guest speaker. I think we had Shane Foley, the ex great quarterback that we had. He was a speaker a couple of years ago. And one of the great traditions for years and years that our crowd looks forward is the old-fashioned Socal spell out. And this is led by Barney Rosenzweig, who was the executive producer of the Cagney and Lacey show. And he was a yell leader back in the late 50s. And so he gets up there on the stage, takes off his jacket, and he leads this Socal spell out, and the crowd goes wild.
All right, I have the video, so let me play it for you. Here you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, plant your feet. Stand up tall. Take a deep breath. This begins, not as you might suspect with the letter S, it begins with attitude. Get ready. It's a Southern California spell out. If you do it right, you will hear the letters bounce off of each and every wall around you. Get ready. Here comes the first letter, which is S. Let me hear it. S. Very good. Very good. Letter O. O. And now a U. U. And now a T. T. 4 letters in rapid succession. A-C-R-A. Excellent. I told you were the best. Halfway through, the letter C is next. Here we go. C. And now an A. A. And now an L. L-R-A-I-A. I love it. Let's tell them all what we just spelled. Come on. The word Southern. Southern. Now, musically. California. Okay? California. Thank you very much.
Nice one there. When did it switch over, Dr. Bartner? Do you know what from the old-fashioned one like we just saw to the SOU2, the faster one they do now?
Well, I think I can't remember, except that as the band got larger and larger and larger, we kind of prepped it. I mean, Barney, he narrates this thing, as you can hear. He's going through, but he's narrating as it goes along. So what I do, I've added an introduction. I've given the band plenty of time and the student body to get ready, and then we go. So we do it at a much faster tempo, and we have a longer intro so that we can get everybody's attention and ready to kick off this traditional yell.
One of the teams, obviously, for the weekender that USC would play is Stanford. And I know there's been some influence there early on. What the Stanford Band was doing, I don't know how different the Stanford Band is now from what it was then, but how did the Stanford Band kind of influence some of your decisions as far as leading the band forward?
Yeah, this whole season was a wake-up call for me, because when I came out from the University of Michigan, I said, well, I will turn the USC band into the second coming of the Michigan Marching Band. And I found out that was just not going to work. And one of the rude awakenings was this first trip to Stanford, and the USC band went out on the field, and we did what I thought was one of our best shows. We did a My Fair Lady theme and kind of took it around the world and did a lot of different styles. I thought it was a pretty innovative show, and the arranger was my friend from the University of Michigan, Jerry Billick. And we got just kind of a very courteous applause, just one of these kind of things. And then the Stanford Band went out, and by the way, they had a lot of guys back then. They had like close to 150 guys. And, they went out there and they just, all the hijinks, was gone. And they just played the latest rock charts, and one after another with just a big sound, a lot of energy. And the crowd just went crazy. The student bodies, alumni, of course, they love anything that is better than what we have at USC. So, I just got a real wake-up call that, maybe this older style halftime shows of Broadway themes was really not going to work with a more contemporary band. So it changed my philosophy. And now I started to ask students for their ideas and what were the latest tunes and what themes would they like to do. And we started the process of student feedback and modeling the band in more contemporary music.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that was the Stanford Band back then was quote unquote normal. It wasn't the kind of antics you see today. I don't know, I keep putting you on the spot. Do you remember when they kind of switched over, and what did you think when that happened?
Well, it's hard to pick one definite time, but as the USC band got larger and more contemporary, the Stanford Band kind of lost that musical edge that they had. They got smaller. They lost that big, full sound that they had. And so they had to come up with something. So they came up with these, crazy off the wall, put downs. I can remember one year they brought out our horse, and instead of a real horse, they had a skeleton and, that kind of thing. And I remember another year they did a theme to dictators, and they made me one of the dictators. And the end of the show was they killed me off on the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
I'm going, what is this? So they went to more shtick instead of just having a great musical sound.
Yeah. The Cal Band's they're more traditional, right? They've been more of a traditional band over the years.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for the Cal Band. They're very much out of the Big Ten mold. They kind of look like Ohio State, almost the same uniforms, and they do a lot of drills that are excellent. They do the same format, but their drills are very well executed. And to their credit, they play contemporary music. So they're kind of combining the old with the new, if you will, and they've been very successful.
Getting back to Stanford, I got a picture. This is Leonard Williams leading the band this is the 2014 game, I believe, and it was the late 53-yard field goal by Andre Hidari to give USC the victory. This is a great shot. I love the shine in the sword, but any particular memories from that big win on the farm?
Well, my youth growing up in New Jersey, I've always rooted for the New York Giants. And here Leonard Williams is playing on the defensive line. So I watched him on Monday night, even though the Giants lost. But Leonard Williams made one of the great plays that I've seen a defensive lineman make. And it was kind of like the story. It was the opposite of what the McKay story that I told about a little bit earlier, where we fumbled on the 1-yard line. Stanford, in their tradition, ran play after play after play from the 1-yard line. and we stopped them every time. And on the last one, fourth down, and if they make it, it's the winning touchdown. Leonard Williams grabbed this running back and just, stopped him cold. It was one of the great stops, individual efforts by a defensive lineman that I've ever seen. And, we held them and kicked the winning field goal. And this gives you a view of our corner with the band surrounded by our student body. It was just a great moment and a great victory for our team.
Yeah, that's a great shot right there. I love that one just to see it. And it's great. I love that when I was a student at USC, I was a freshman in '89. And I think I came up to the weekender with Stanford, and that was like the earthquake, the big earthquake year, like the Giants and the A's were playing. But just being in the stadium and seeing so many USC fans, I was like, wow, this is amazing, And some years when like Cal would be terrible, there would be like three corners of all USC fans, and you do like the end of the game USC cheer going and stuff. So I was like, as a freshman in early years of college, I was always impressed with the number of people that would go up and support USC for the weekender.
Yes, it's I preach to the band. Our goal is to go into an opponent's stadium and to take over their stadium. And obviously the band plays a big role, but you can't do it without bands. Bands, the student body, they love this trip. Our fan base goes up, and you want our team to feel as if it's a home game. You want that home field advantage. And it's really a lot of fun, and it's a great experience for our students to go up and be part of this. Of course, it's important to win the game.
Yes.
There's a lot of stories. I remember the Pete Carroll Cal game. I think it was another rain. It was a rain drizzle. Just awful game to sit through because it was this drizzle, typical Bay Area drizzle. And the game, it was, I think it might have even gone to overtime, and we lost the game in overtime. And I think after that game, I think Pete Carroll's teams went on and won 34 games in a row. And so maybe it turned out to be for the best, but there's some heartaches that have occurred on the road beside all the great wins.
Yeah, it's funny that game. So it was, I think, Jeff Tedford's win over Pete Carroll, and everyone was like, "Oh, Tedford's got like Carroll's number," and it's just one of those things. He's one of those alpha coaches, as you know, and I think he didn't want to ever let Jeff Tedford beat him again after that. And I don't think he did. So that was, but everyone was talking about it like, "Hey, Jeff Tedford's got Pete Carroll's number," and he pretty much made sure that wasn't going to be the case. And they had some great, obviously, Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch. They had some great teams, but yeah, I don't believe Pete Carroll lost to him ever again.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, nice. Well, hey, Dr. Bartner, this has been great stuff. Any last thoughts on I have an announcement, but any last thoughts on the 1970 season or any of the weekender traditions we maybe didn't go over that you want to talk about?
Well, it's just been, we've almost seemed like we've covered 50 years, and what a great journey it has been for me. From 30 years old, really frightening, going on the road with this band to San Francisco, never been to San Francisco before, and having that experience of Union Square, and then, getting to relive some of the memories from the 21st century. So I've been very fortunate to have this just marvelous career, and I thank the Trojan family, because without them, it would have never been a success that it was.
Yeah, and I know they all thank you, Dr. Bartner, because, the team wins and loses, but the band is always there. So I think that's one of the constants that at least the USC fans, if the team lays an egg and they lose a game, they always feel good about, the Trojan Marching Band playing. So that's a testament to you and what you've been able to do over these last insane 50 years. It's just hard to believe.
Yes, it is. And the time, it's the one thing that I really enjoy about these podcasts is that I get to relive this, because where did these 50 years go? I mean, they just kind of flew by, and now you can take, a game here, a game there, and a tradition here, and you get a chance to relive them. So I thank you for making this possible.
Yeah, no, thank you, Dr. Bartner. And it's funny, when the top of the show, 1970, I mean, I'm thinking 50 years, it's obviously a long time. I thought 1970 would be like in the middle of that somewhere. Like, wait, that was his first year. Like, it's hard to believe how quickly that I guess that was the year I was born too, but that's, I don't know, or at least my age, but yeah, I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to be 50 this year. So I guess that's it.
Right.
Crazy. Well, thanks, Dr. Bartner. And real quick announcement, there are still limited edition Dr. Bartner 80th birthday bundles available. Each bundle has a signed The Gold Standard album with a 50th logo pin, a magnet, a mug, keychain, and a t-shirt, all for $80. It's a package worth well over $100. So if you go to uscbookstore.com/Spirit of Troy, all of the proceeds will benefit the band's scholarship fund. So make sure you go check that out. And hopefully you're having a great 80th birthday year, Dr. Bartner. And I guess we'll see you again next week. Thanks for coming on.
Fight on!